The Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians is pleased to present this audio-video replay. Please remember to like our videos and subscribe to our YouTube channel to receive notifications of future content.
Welcome, everyone, to our National Accessibility Week, the first of our two authors event. And we thank you for joining the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians. As I said, it's our second 2026 National Accessibility Week event, but it's the first one in the authors series. And my name is Marcy Yale, and I'm AEBC's national president. I live in Ontario, but AEBC is a national advocacy organization of primarily blind, deafblind, and partially sighted members who are located in all parts of Canada. The members of the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians recognize that these lands on which we live, work, and gather, including the digital infrastructure of our organization, are on the traditional and unceded homelands and territories of many Indigenous peoples, including First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, from coast to coast to coast. We acknowledge our duty to walk with and alongside reconciliation and decolonization efforts. Before I introduce today's special guests, and we'll do them one at a time, I will briefly outline some housekeeping protocols. Today's session is being recorded for our YouTube and audio channels, and those who are unable to attend virtually. So we want everybody to be able to listen, whether they could be here tonight or not. Please remain muted throughout the session unless you are called upon to speak. After the presentation, if you wish to ask a question, please raise your hand and we will call on you and give you an opportunity to unmute. Once you have asked your question, please mute yourself again to give our speaker the opportunity to respond. For those of you who may be joining us in Zoom for the first time, please note the following Zoom commands. And to mute and unmute, so it's a toggle. On a Windows PC, it's Alt-A. On a Mac, it's Command-Shift-A. And on a smartphone, locate the mute-unmute button on the main screen of the Zoom app, and sometimes the two-finger double tap will work for that as well. And on a landline, it's *6 to mute or unmute. And to raise or lower your hand, on a PC, it's Alt-Y. On a Mac, it's Option-Y. And on a smartphone, it's under the More, and it's the raise hand button. And lately it's been under the More fairly consistently. And on a landline, it's *9. So those are the Zoom keyboard shortcuts. Now, I am both honored and proud to have the privilege of introducing and welcoming the first of today's guest authors, Hannah Levitt. And I'm going to let Hannah give all of her bio or whatever she wants to say rather than me babbling. So go ahead, Hannah.
Thanks very much, Marcy. I appreciate that. My name is Hannah Laura Levitt. I live in Victoria, British Columbia, just on Vancouver Island. I've been a resident here over 20 years now. And while I've been here, I've went back to school as a mature student and got my bachelor's degree and got a master's degree while I was there. And had a really good experience. I lost my vision when I was 10 years old due to a cancerous brain tumor. And while it was successfully removed, the damage to my optic nerves was permanent. So I have no vision in my right eye and just a little bit in my left. So I'm let's see what have I got here. I'm an author of two books. The first one is called The Disability Experience, Working Toward Belonging. It's on CELA in human narrated audio. And my second book, which is just out in the last few weeks, is called All About Us, 20 Tales of Courage and Disability. I'm a Braille user. I have been all my life, a screen reader user. As Marcia can tell you, not the most competent one, but I still use my screen reader. And iPhone and any other tools I can get my hands on to tell my stories. I use them all. I'm going to be talking about some examples from my second book today. And but before I do that, I just want you to think about a few things. The first item is the Mars rover, a place called Vision Village, a glow stick, a fashion model, and an entertainer, zero gravity, and granola. What do all those things have in common with National Accessibility Week? We'll we'll find out as I go along here. So, um, the first person I wanted to introduce you to is a woman named Dr. Kay Renee Horton. She's in Texas and she's works with NASA. She applied to be in the Air Force when she was only 17 years old and was rejected when she went for her medical and found out she was hard of hearing. She had no idea that she had hearing loss, significant hearing loss too. It really shocked her because to her, deafness was a disability of elderly people, and she was just young. It was really shocking for her, and she didn't have any mentors around to help her with it. So she ended up dropping out of school. She dropped out of her life, really, and just lived a small life. She did this for about 10 years when she realized that the limitations she had put on herself weren't honest and they weren't going to get her anywhere. So she revisited her decision to go back to school. And she did that. She went back to school and got her PhD in material sciences. And um, now she's working for NASA and she's overseeing the welding of the Mars rover spaceship. So she's come a long way. So, um, so Dr. Horton creates awareness besides being a mentor on her job and a hard of hearing person. She also advocates by writing books for children about science and space exploration. So she's found a way in her life to incorporate that as a way of teaching others about awareness. Another fellow that I profiled in the book is named Stephen Daniels. Some of you may have heard of him if you're Paralympic fans. He's a paratriathlete from Calgary, and he was born with his arms foreshortened. So his right arm is quite a lot shorter than his left. But he's a paratriathlete. He swims, he cycles, and he runs. And he was basically destined for this in his life because his father is an Ironman triathlete. His mother's run the Boston Marathon, and his brother is a Paralympian swimmer. So he was really destined for this future for himself. Stefan talks about working smarter, not harder. Sometimes he doesn't get the outcome he wants with a race. And instead of being hard on himself and asking himself why, he looks for reasons why he may have not done as well and not he doesn't look for excuses. He looks at things like, am I getting enough rest? Am I eating properly? Am I training consistently enough? So Stefan promotes accessibility and advocates through excellence in sports and being a superb athlete. Another profile that we have uh, is a gal named Paige Whitehead. She's at UBC in Vancouver, and she's has what we call an invisible disability. She's got chronic pain, and she struggles with depression as well. Like Dr. Horton, Paige opted out of school for a couple of years when the pain and the depression got too great and she couldn't function anymore. But she still had her dream of working in environmental sciences. So she dropped out for a while and spent a lot of time at home. She tried every kind of medical discipline she could to try to address her depression and to try to address her chronic pain. Therapists of every kind, doctors of every kind, and nobody uh, could come up with a solution for her. So she was resigned to living a small life at that point. But her life changed when a couple of friends came by one day and invited her to a music festival. And they thought that being out in the fresh air and the music would help her take her mind and off her problems and distract her. Well, it did. Um, Paige was horrified when she got to the music festival and saw all the glow stick garbage lying around the premises. Her science background, she was able to identify that that was garbage, that wasn't recyclable. And she was really bothered by that, and it got her um, um, it gave her a purpose. Once she got home again, she went to her sick bed and emailed every scientist she could think of with her idea for a recyclable glow stick. And they got back to her and told her that it was a great idea, that she needed to carry on with it. But so she did. She actually went back to school and started researching an area of science called bioluminescence. That's when fireflies glow in the dark and marine bugs and other critters glow in the dark. It's a phenomenon called bioluminescence. So she and her scientific team did experiments and found out that it was a protein in these bugs that caused them to glow in the dark. So they harvested the protein and made their first recyclable glow stick. And that distracted her so completely from her problems that Paige is thriving at school again. And one of the things that's given her extra passion for her project of recycle, you might think that glow sticks are, so there's a few glow sticks that leave garbage around behind. But Paige was doing research and she found that the country of Australia uses 2 billion glow sticks a year in their commercial fisheries. They attach them to the nets of boats and submerge them. And and that's when the fish see the light and swim into the nets. So, and what's been happening with those sticks is the garbage from them has been ending up on the coast of New Zealand. So they've developed their first glow stick. She's got a package in the mail to them and they're trying it out for her. So she's super excited about that. Paige's passion for recycling is is brings a lot of potential to her business of developing more products that are luminescent, safety equipment and such like life jackets and things out on the ocean that will glow in the dark as well. Another young gal that is from Winnipeg, Manitoba is Talia Braun, and she's the 14-year-old mayor of a place called Vision Village. Talia lives, just like I said, just outside of Winnipeg, and she was born with one micro-ophthalmic, one miniature eye that was totally blind, and one normal eye that was visually impaired. But because, as we most of us know, that if you have an eye that's smaller, as you grow, your face may become a bit deformed and asymmetrical. So they recommended to her parents that she get a prosthetic eye, and so that her bones would grow to the right shape around the eye. So they did that. But by the time she was in her teens, she was feeling quite different and quite alone because nobody ever came by that had a prosthetic eye. And she felt very alone. She talked to her mom and dad about this, and her dad volunteered to help her set up a website, which they call Vision Village. So people can come on the site, sign up, and either have pen pals or get people's phone numbers and create community that way. And Talia also brings a sense of humor to her project. She has three prosthetic eyes that she's grown out of, that she still has. One of them has a box of French fries painted on them. One of them has a miniature owl printed on them, and one of them has the word beloved written on it. So she brings humor with her to her project as well. She sings in her local choir, and she teaches English to Ukrainian immigrants. Talia really shows us how passion can inspire awareness and through advocacy. I also met three really great kids. They're all like 12, 13, 14. Stella Bartlett is one of them. Jordan Gagnon is another, and Finn Rigash is another. These kids, um, they embody representation. They want to be seen on the same stages and the same runways and the same commercials and TV shows as able-bodied kids. Stella is a singer and a dancer. Even though she's in a wheelchair, she choreographs her own music, her own dancing. They walk and wheel along the runways and stages. They sing and dance in their very own unique way. Talent agencies have come to recognize the representation aspect, that people want to see themselves on TV and be represented in the media. So these kids have all done multiple commercials and starred. Stella Bartlett starred in a CBC season-long television show called Ukulele U, and where she sang and danced. So these kids have really done a lot to promote advocacy and awareness for the abilities of people with disabilities in entertainment. Stella herself was discovered at a choir practice by a talent agent, and the other two were the same way. Finn is a young man who has a facial scar that's quite prominent, but you'd think a kid like that with a facial scar wouldn't want to be out in public and be seen, but he thinks it's his way of being memorable and he likes it. He wants to be on stage and he wants to be seen. So they are growing up with the expectation that they will be able to pursue careers in their field. So those are three young people that have used their bodies and their voices to create awareness in the community. There's also another young man uh, whose name is Zaman Vidridge, and he's also known as the Granola Kid. Zaman, in his family, he used to make granola every Sunday morning for his family, and he was very comfortable in the kitchen. Zaman was born with Down syndrome, so he's neurodivergent, but he's a real go-getter and he wants to be a businessman. So his brother and father helped him out with finding a commercial kitchen where he could make his granola. And he uses networking through the Canadian Mental Health Association, through the Special Olympics, and through the Down Syndrome organization to get his products to the market. His family helps him out with packaging and shipping as well. Zaman uses his gift for cooking as a way to reach out to others about the abilities of people with Down syndrome. The last woman I want to tell you about is a woman named Rosie John. She's from the United Kingdom. She lived in the States for a number of years, but she's gone back to the United Kingdom now. But she was born with no arms below her elbows. So all she has to work with is her feet. But she does everything with them. She was born into a family that expected her to pull her own weight as one of the siblings. So she had to learn quickly how to use her feet to do everything. She got married and went to university. She's a mother of three children herself now, and she refers to herself as dancing with paint. Her story is that she has the three children she has. When she would take them to school and other events, she noticed other children were looking at her because she didn't have two full arms. And she didn't want her kids to be victims of bullying or teasing or anything because their mom wasn't the same as other moms. So she talked to the teachers and asked if she could do a little motivational speech for the kids and teach them how to paint with their feet too. So the teachers were glad to do that. So she had the kids take their shoes and socks off and get dirty in the paint, and she got them to draw simple images with their feet, and then she would fill them in with her paint. And just from that little bit of trying to create some awareness and doing some advocacy with her art, she got multiple international speaking gigs um, where she talked about um, her art and how she functions as a mom and a wife and a woman with no arms. She uses her innate talent to create awareness and advocacy. So, so we've all know there's lots of ways to advocate and try to create awareness out there. Whether you use your voice, your mind, your body, or your innate talent, whether in full gravity or zero gravity, we're all creating change through advocacy and awareness. So congratulations and keep up the good work. So Marcy, if you want to take some questions, we could do
Hey,
now.
so if anybody wants to ask a question, if you can just raise your hand and we will create a nice little speakers list. Chantal.
Hi, Hannah. It
Hi,
was
Chantal.
really neat to hear about some of these things and the things you mentioned that your book is about. I was at a union meeting for my work years ago, and mm, lucky for me, I was at least sitting in the front row. But the entertainment was people dancing in wheelchairs. I had never seen anything like it, and I'm telling you, they can move. I found that kind of very inspiring. And so I'm wondering what inspired you to write this type of book? I mean, a lot of us, Mom, I shouldn't say it like that. If I was going to write a book today, I think my first thoughts would be my life, my family, how I got to where I am, and where I didn't go that I was too afraid to go. So, what inspired you to write, to describe all these people with different disabilities?
Well, I worked with my publisher on that. Um, my first book has done really well, and they want more books about disability in the world. So they called me and we talked about it, and they recommended I read this book called oh, now I can't remember the title of it.
It's good.
Um, oh, it's called I Am Not a Label. And so I got
Oh,
the book and I read it, and it was very cliche. It was all about, like, there's Helen Keller and Beethoven and Louis
mm,
Braille and all the very cliche,
well known.
yeah, well-known people, but it didn't talk about everyday kind of people that, not everybody is amazing. Some people are just go through their day and you know, um, do their best, and their best is good enough, right?
Hmm.
So it was more a matter of I didn't want to write a book about amazing disabled people. And I told them that too, that I was really conscious of that when I was writing, that I didn't want to say inspiring all the time, or, all those words we were also used to hearing. So, and then the funny thing about it was, though, when I finished the book and it just was we had a book launch just a few weeks ago. I realized that book is really truly filled with stories about amazing people. So, in my own way, whether I wanted to write about amazing people or not, I still did it. So,
Well, then it helps us discover that there are other ways to portray our disabilities and to, promote that we can be encouraged to do all kinds of things. So thank you. I look forward to reading the book.
thank you, Chandel.
Anyone else? I see Penny, you unmuted. Did you want to ask Hannah something?
Also,
No?
something.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah, here. Now she was going to ask, like, I actually have done that too. Unfortunately, I can't print it because it was for someone else. But the question did you have any problems with some people? Because I don't know if you know Craig Oliver. He was a reporter. He's actually visually impaired. And I asked him for a biography. He sent me a poem. And when I said, women, that I want a biography, he really got angry at me for refusing his poem.
Could I get you to repeat that, just Marcy? It's not coming through my speaker very clearly.
Um, I think he asked if you had any issues with any of the people that you approached to do the book, or
Yes, that's it.
were they all ready and willing to be immortalized?
Yes. Well, one of the gals that is one of the models, her goal is to be famous. So she was all gung ho for this. She got to be in a book. Um, but I didn't have many problems with it. When I researched um, trying to find people that had been, doing interesting activities, I looked on organizational newsletters, I looked at AMI's features, I looked at magazines for the disabled, I looked at sports like the Paralympics and looking for people. And most people were really, I didn't have anybody flat out refuse me. One mother of there's a young boy in the book who's totally deaf and he plays hockey and he's 10 years old and he's a real go-getter and he's also an actor. He was in a movie that made it to the big screen, but his mother didn't, she thought he had enough attention as it was. So I have information about him in the book, but I didn't actually interview him because his mother didn't want his head getting too swollen. But other than that, everybody was really agreeable.
That's great. How did you find everybody? That was the question I had, was
Well, like I
how did you
say,
find
AMI has
everybody?
features of people, in business and different areas. Um, Organizational newsletters are really handy. I always tell all my friends that I'm looking for people too because they have access to things I don't have access to. Like the one gal I talked about, Stella Bartlett. A friend of mine saw her on TV in Ontario and told me about her before I was even writing the book, but I kept her name in case, who knows, I might need it someday, right? So it's just
Great.
a lot of research, a lot of research.
Great. And Penny, you've got your actually Diana and then Penny.
Okay, I was just wondering how much trouble, or if you had any trouble. I noticed you said your first book was on SELA. How much trouble do you have getting people to put things into alternate formats, to convince them that they should be put in alternate formats?
Well, my second book, which came out at the beginning of May, was supposed to be released with human narrated audio at the same time as it was released in print. So I was really excited about that because I thought, oh, I've got a publisher that's right on track with this now. But there were problems with it and it didn't happen, unfortunately. But people are pretty willing to help out with that. They just don't always know ahead of time that they should be giving it more leeway, more time, more lead time to work on it. Because there's lots of laws and bylaws and everything around publishing, right? So,
Okay, and I think our last question is going to come from Penny. So Penny, you can unmute and ask your question.
Hello, and it's a lovely evening to listen to your uh, description of your book. Congratulations for writing it, for taking the courage. Wondering how many people did you have sort of to initially had on a list? Did you have a lot of people and you had to, just come down to the numbers that you came for the length of the book? How did you do that?
can I get you to repeat her question again, Marcy?
Sure. So she's asking, did you have more than the number of people that you ended up with in your book? Did you have more people
I
that,
did have because on my first go around, I had proportionately more visually impaired people in the book, and I had to pare that down because they wanted representation from all disabilities and also BIPOC, the um, Black Indigenous persons of color uh, requirement. They want in publishing, they want that too. So I had to balance skin color, cultural backgrounds, um, and all of that to please the publisher. So it did require some jigging around for sure.
Great. Well, that brings us to the 30 minutes perfectly. So I want to thank you, Hannah, for joining us tonight, and feel free to stick around.
I
Uh,
will. Thank you.
we don't kick people out. Everybody is welcome to be muted, and hang out with us. And it's now time for me to probably get in trouble, but hopefully not.
Oh
Hopefully
yeah.
not. Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah. So um this is someone that I have known for a
Mm.
long time. But I won't hold it against him, and hopefully he won't hold it against me. But I
Mhm.
am proud and honored to have the privilege of introducing and welcoming the second of today's guest authors, and an AEBC member himself, David Lepofsky. And I'll let him introduce himself and take it away, David.
Well, thank you. It's great to be talking to you all. I really only want to introduce myself by describing two phone calls. One that I got 51 years ago, and one that I got 46 phone years ago. Both came into my parents' house where I was living, and both I answered in the kitchen on those things called landlines that so many people know nothing about. The first call, I was doing a summer project between first and second year university for 6 weeks, for which we got a federal grant, like one of these grants that helps create projects for young people. Going into elementary schools in the north end of Toronto, the area called North York, to make presentations about blindness, to talk to kids. It sort of came to realize we got to change attitudes, so let's go do some presentations. Well, I did one in one particular school, and came home, and at 5 o'clock that afternoon, the phone rang, and this 10-year-old girl who was a student in the class called, identified herself, and said that she's blind and her mom won't let her go down the street by herself to the corner store. Would I please tell her mother to let her do this? Now, this is what we in ancient Latin call chutzpah, gutsiness. I don't know how she found my phone number. She doesn't remember this call, but not only do I remember it, but I've held it against her ever since, because she's the person you all know as Marcy Yale. That's how we met. And ever since then, I followed her progress, and she followed mine, and we became friends and stayed friends. And here we are. The second phone call is the top, and I just like telling that story so she can squirm. I was very impressed. And by the way, I don't think I called her mother and told her to walk down the street, but probably by then she was doing it by herself without telling her mother. In any event, um, so it's the second call. It's December 10th, 1980. And I'd spent a day skipping the bar admission course classes I was supposed to be at. I'd finished law school a year and a half before, did our apprenticeship called articling, and now I had to go through 6 months of bar exams, and the classes were horrendous. So I skipped them and went to the Ontario legislature to watch debates on a bill for which we'd been advocating, a bunch of us, to get, including a guy named John Ray, you may have heard of, to get disability added to the Ontario Human Rights Code. When I got home, it was about 5 o'clock. I'm waiting for my mom to make dinner, and the phone rang. So I answered and said, hello? And a mature adult voice, a little surprised at my saying hello, said, is this the CNIB? And I said, who are you calling for? And the person said, is this the CNIB? And I said, who are you looking for? And he said, I'm calling from the House of Commons to contact the CNIB about appearing in 2 days before the Joint Committee of the Senate and the House of Commons of Canada, holding hearings on the future of our Constitution. This wasn't just another phone call. This phone call kind of changed my life. Um, about 3 months earlier, a guy named Pierre Trudeau, who was prime minister, proposed to amend Canada's constitution and patriate it, bring it home from England. He proposed including a charter of rights, said it would guarantee equality for all, and to that end, the Charter of Rights included an equality provision, Section 15. This is great news. But Section 15 did not include equality for people with disabilities. In fact, the way it was written, we could not be, we were not protected. No court could interpret it that we were, because it said everyone is equal before and under the law, and has the right to equal protection of the law without discrimination. And then it listed these grounds: without discrimination because of race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, age, or sex. If you weren't in that list, you weren't protected. I had decided as a bar admission law student that we should do something about this. Other people had decided that they should do something about this too, but most of us didn't know who each other was or what they were doing. We advocated for the next several months, and we ultimately won. And it's because of that that our Constitution, because of this collective effort, no one individual in the disability community was decisive. We were all doing our thing. But it's because of that that disability equality was added to the Charter of Rights by an amendment that was passed unanimously by that committee about a month and a half later. Disability rights were not only added, but equality for people with disabilities was the only right that was added to the Charter of Rights during the year and a half that the Charter was being debated in Parliament. Most Canadians don't know that. Most people with disabilities don't know that. Most constitutional law professors don't know that. In fact, very few people know the story that led to how we won. I wrote a memoir about it, and that's what Marcy asked me to talk to you about tonight. Now, what I've decided to do is not tell you how we won it, because I want you to read the memoir, and it's available for free. You can download it from the website of the AODA Alliance. The website's simple. It's aodaalliance.org/publications. You could get it in Word, or God forbid, PDF or EPUB, or as an audio book. And I don't want to make any money from this book, so I'm making it available completely free throughout those various formats. I waived copyright protection on the audiobook, so it's not limited to blind people. Anyone can grab it. It's also available, I believe, through Sella. But whichever way, I invite you to read it. I tried to make it a bit entertaining. There are important references to the most important legal authority I know, Star Trek, with footnotes to the Star Trek episodes to which I refer. But it was an amazing story, and I encourage you to read it. I want to tell you, however, about the most important context about it for you as you are listening. And that's covered in one chapter where I talked about what it was like to do disability advocacy in 1980. Because most people these days, especially if they're under the age of, 50, don't have a clue what it was like back then. We did not have an internet. We did not have social media. We did not have Zoom. We did not have fax machines. I didn't yet own a VCR. Audiobooks were on cassette, And it was only a recent innovation that you could speed cassettes up and play them faster than normal speed. Oh my God, that came just before law school. My tape recorder that I lugged to law school was about the size of a Victor Reader Stratus and weighs about 10 times as much. Um, we did not have any digital audiobooks. We only had audio recorded or Braille, and there was very little in Braille, and my Braille sucked. If you wanted to send a letter to Parliament, we didn't have word processors. We had typewriters. So you had to type it and then type it again and again for each of them, or leave one area blank and then fill in their addresses. If you wanted to send a news release to the media, of course, we didn't have email. We couldn't fax it. You had to write it, photocopy it, and then put it in the snail mail so it would get to the media not in seconds, but maybe in a couple of days. We didn't have cell phones. So if you wanted to wait for a call from the media, you better stay by your phone all the time. When I was in law school, which was 76 to 79, we didn't talk about disability rights. The word disability wasn't found in the same paragraph as the word rights. There were no courses on it. I didn't learn anything about it. In fact, I don't think I read more than one case about the subject of equality in all of law school. When I was in law school, constitutional law was not about a charter of rights. We didn't have one, and we didn't expect to get one. Our constitutional law course was a god-awful boring course about which powers are given by our Constitution to Ottawa and which to the provinces. The way I would describe it is if you want to market a chicken, you had to decide whether it was one that is marketed by a federal chicken marketing board or a provincial chicken marketing board. Or you might want to say, is it an intra-provincial chicken or an inter-provincial chicken? I'm barely not joking. So, but as well, not only didn't we talk about disability rights, we didn't have a disability rights movement. There had been a movement developing in the States that led to important legislation, and we'd heard about it and read about it, but we weren't there yet. There was a predecessor to AEBC called Boost, which John Ray and Mike Yale were two of the founders of. And I had some involvement with it for a time. But vast majority of disability organizations were service providers, and they didn't tend to do advocacy very much. Not like we know now. If you said advocacy, they thought it's government relations tied to fundraising. I'm talking about a lot of these agencies, not just in the blindness field. As well, they didn't have anybody on staff who knew how to do lobbying or advocacy like we know how to do now, or a number of us do. And as well, there was no way to get together like we're getting together tonight. If you wanted to talk to somebody outside of Toronto, you had to pay long distance rates on the phone. If you wanted to have a meeting, you had to be in the same room, which meant meeting across Canada isn't very realistic. So it was in these kinds of contexts. When I got that call, I couldn't go and look up online what the proposals were in Ottawa and what had been said before the Joint Committee. Now I could look all that up online on Hansard, the transcripts from Parliament, or watch live streams. There was a parliamentary the hearings on the Constitution were being televised, but it was the first time they ever televised them. And of course, you had to either watch it or miss it. They did replay them over the weekends or evenings, and I was one of the few nerds who watched some of it. Not exciting. And if you went to the media, what they knew about disability was either oh, isn't Marcy amazing because she's overcome these terrible barriers? A blind person can actually do X. Or Isn't it terrible that she has to suffer through Y? Or isn't it heartwarming that this wonderful organization is now donating money to build Z? Those were the news stories. If you talk to them about the kind of stories that we routinely take to the media about disability barriers and battling for equality, reporters, for one thing, wouldn't have considered it news. And if they did, it would be in what they now call the life section of the paper, which, by the way, back then was usually called the women's section. I'm not making this stuff up. This is what life was like back then. And so when I got involved in doing this, I will tell you in a nutshell that I decided, and that the memoir describes it in greater detail. The memoir is called Swimming Up Niagara Falls, because that's what it felt like we were trying to do. So if you just Google Swimming Up Niagara Falls, you'll find it. But in any event, I got involved and decided I needed a platform. Nobody's going to, if I went to the media and said David Lepofsky thinks, nobody would like, who the hell is he? Some law student. And if I went to the parliament and said, I want to appear before you, I'm a citizen, like, good luck. I needed an organizational platform. I was on the provincial board of CNIB for Ontario. So I lobbied internally to get the CNIB to let me be their spokesperson on this. And through a series of stick handling and steps that are related in the memoir, I dug up all my old not emails, we didn't have it, but memos on this, and it's actually quite a story. I got permission to do it. We applied. I wrote a brief. I didn't know how to write a brief. Sent it in. We asked to be heard, but it was before the joint committee. But the committee had a backlog of people who wanted to appear before it, and Pierre Trudeau was trying to ram this through really quickly, so they had a short timeline. I didn't think it was possible in a million years that I would get asked to appear. What had happened a day or two before I got that phone call was the opposition had pressed for more hearings time. The committee the government agreed, and they went and quickly looked at the list of who to hear from, and we got an invitation. Two other disability organizations had already appeared. The organization you know as the Council of Canadians with Disabilities was then called the Canadian Organization of Provincial Organizations of the Handicapped, or COPO. And the other organization is the one you now know as Inclusion Canada, but which then was called the Canadian Association for the Mentally Retarded, a name you couldn't imagine them using now. My memoir takes you through what they said, and while I was working independently of them, didn't have a clue what they were doing, they ultimately made tremendous submissions, and mine, just by luck, fit together really well with theirs. So the main thing I want to convey to you as a message, I'm going to open it up to questions very shortly, are a few things. There's a couple things. The first is, and it's an important message that I try through the memoir to convey, and that is, I did not have a clue what I was doing from beginning to end, whether it was how to write a news release, or how to make a parliamentary presentation, and or any of these other steps. And in fact, I have a whole chapter in the memoir of things I should have done. I do not like memoirs where people talk about all the great things they did. I try to instead talk about what I did that turned out to be the right thing, and some of the things I did that turned out to be really stupid. Because I want people to learn from my mistakes and my experience. I also talk about how I would do it differently now, because I want the future disability advocates and current disability advocates to learn from the story. So, and the important message from this is you can take part in this advocacy when you don't know what the heck you're doing. Now, there are people on this Zoom whose names I recognize. I'm not going to call them out by name, like Penny Bennett or Richard Marion, for example. I won't name them, or Marcy, but they are superb advocates. But they started out at some point in time not knowing how to do this, and no one teaching them, and just doing it. And that's, I find, the biggest limitation on our success is the feeling among many people with disabilities that either there's no point, or even if there's a point, I don't know what to do. Um, and if we can get people over those feelings, we can accomplish a great deal. I call the book, the next point I want to make is I called the memoir Swimming Up Niagara Falls because objectively, and I explain it in the memoir, objectively, what we were trying to do was impossible. Nobody understood these rights. We did not have a recognized track record. Disability was mostly the focus of charity and pity, and not rights. We didn't have expertise in what we were doing. Trudeau was in a hurry, and so on. So, uh, but the lesson to be learned is that the fact that something we're setting out to do looks objectively impossible shouldn't stop us. And indeed, in 1994, when a group of 20 of us started campaigning for the what became the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, it looked as impossible. But having us collectively having won this battle in 1980 just became more motivation to keep on going, no matter how hopeless something may seem. And when I've had politicians say to me, David, you've gotten as much as we could give you, you're not going to get any more, this government's not going to move, I smile, I thank them very much, and I just ignore them. And I learned that from 1980. And the final thing is, the most important thing I think we've gotten so far out of the Charter so far has not been the number of court wins that we should have. There have been some, but not enough. But because the fact of this right has made a new generation of people with disabilities in Canada see themselves not as charity recipients, but as rights holders. We have expectations about our rights. And that is very different than the world 50 years ago for many people with disabilities. Um, and in fact, things like the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, comparable legislation in other provinces and federally, while they have nowhere near come up to what we need them to do or what Canada could do, we are better off than if they weren't there. And it was the existence of our rights in the Charter that very much underpinned our ability to get those laws passed. So let me wrap up with just a couple of offerings for you. I've already encouraged you to read the memoir, and I welcome your feedback on it. I'll give you my email address. It's best to use my AODA address. It's aodafeedback@gmail.com. aodafeedback@gmail.com. Please let me know what you think of it. The second thing is I have a new podcast, and I want to encourage people to download and listen to it. It's available on all the audio podcast platforms. It's not on YouTube. It's on Apple Music. It's on Spotify. If you use Downcast, you can get it. It's generally available. I decided that we don't have kind of an oral history of the battles we've fought and lessons we've learned. So I decided to do a podcast where I interview people who've been doing disability advocacy. So far, it's been people in Canada, but I'm trying to reach out to the rest of the world. And I ask people to tell their stories of what they did, what they tried, and what we can learn from it. I'm very busy trying to generate action tips. My aim is for this to be kind of an oral history, but also a teaching tool for people who want to advocate on disability rights or any social justice advocacy issue. The title of the podcast, which I like because it's so dorky, is Disability Rights and Wrongs, the David Lepodcast. So if you want to look it up, you just go to whatever your podcatcher program is and just search on David L.E. Podcast, a space between David and Le Podcast. Don't just search on Le Podcast because you'll get French podcasts by the tongue. Le Podcast. But give it a listen. Tell me what you think about it. Most of our downloads are in Canada and the US, but we've got downloads from Israel to New Zealand to Saudi Arabia to Iraq to Chechnya and Uzbekistan. Small numbers, but still, it's pretty cool. Episodes number 10 and 11 were me interviewing one of the other people who was very involved in this advocacy, but we didn't know each other back then. We met many years later, and we compared our stories of our involvement in fighting for the disability amendment, and that is the always wonderful Yvonne Peters. It was so much fun comparing our stories because both of us talk about how we did not have a clue of what we were doing. She was doing it in Saskatchewan, I would do it in Toronto, and we would meet later. I think we first met in the Supreme Court of Canada on a case. I can't remember. But anyway, check it out. And the final thing before I open it to questions is if any of you or all of you, I invite you to sign up to get email updates from the AODA Alliance. I chair it. I write the updates. You can learn whether you're in Ontario or anywhere in Canada. We always give you updates on what we're up to and action tips on how you can help. And we hope, like the podcast, that this will help people who want to engage in advocacy activities. And we've pulled off a number of things over the years that are all documented or updates. And we got lots more coming. Where do you go? You go to our homepage, and there's right near the top, there's a link that says sign up for our newsletter. You click on it, you type in your email address. Our website, the usual www, then it's AODA Alliance, one word, AODA Alliance.org. And it's the publications link where you can download the memoir. So check it out, give it a listen. And by the way, if you get those updates and you hit reply, whatever you say in reply comes right to me. So it's an easy way to reach me. So with that, I'm going to kick it back to the Marcy, who is as unrestrained in her advocacy as she was as a 10-year-old, and say, are there any questions?
And I have Richard.
So we've got two questions. Did your mom finally let you go down the street to the store, Marcy?
I don't remember. I really don't. I honestly, we every once in a while he tells that story and I just laugh because I can see myself doing it, but I can't honestly remember that that I did it. But I can see
Maybe it was a
doing
bar you wanted to go to.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
At the
but
young
it's a great story. It's an example of like
Oh, yeah.
how the sort of outspoken children become advocates. Because I was thinking back to my own childhood of basically trying to get my parents to let me do stuff, including I used to ride a bike by myself. I had a little, well, very little usable vision, but I thought I had enough, and they let me do it. Things like that. So like I was great to see. David, I did have a question for you, and
Yes.
thank you for talking about your memoirs. I am going to download it because my husband and I have a long flight to Scotland in 2 days, and it's perfect reading for for a flight. Because I was looking for a couple additional books, so I am going to download because I find disability history fascinating. So it would be good to hear about a lot of this because I only know a bit about it, like a tiny bit about it because talking to Bob Fenton and yourself and John Ray when I first met him and the Boost Day. So it's good. It's going to be good to read this as well. But I had a question for you about today's people with disabilities, or like the community of people with disabilities. Do you think that because we've had so many hard-won battles back then, that is that part of the reason? Like, do they think it's a little like because young people don't seem to be as interested in that sort of hard advocacy anymore? And I'm wondering if it's because we are so connected by the internet, and it's like in some ways it's easier, some ways it's more challenging. But do you think that's why young people don't see the value in that sort of community as much in that community organizing? Like for them, it seems like if I can achieve it through um, Facebook or Instagram, then I'm successful. But what do you just what kind of your thoughts on that? Like, because the nature of the community has changed because there is so much more technology now too, and access to information is a lot easier, as you pointed out. Like we can get transcripts of those hearings and do a lot of background research before even preparing a brief as well, or in my case, a press release. Shaming the provincial government during a provincial election about cutting funding for deaf students when I was first getting involved in disabled students politics. Yeah, I had no clue about how to write a press release, but I did it.
Well, let me tell you this. Number one, when I think back to 1980, the people actually involved in fighting for this thing were microscopic in numbers. Okay. In other words, this wasn't like a groundswell in the streets. You have to understand the battle over the Constitution was one being fought between the premiers and the prime minister. The public was a spectator. And there was very few in the public. The women's movement did quite a job of organizing, and I talk about that in the book. But they were exceptional, and some of the indigenous community. But that was kind of it. It was very much a spectator sport. It was, what Canadians often say about themselves. The, I was at the when I was at Harvard doing my master's. Margaret Atwood gave a talk at one of the faculties and about Canada-U.S. comparisons. And at one point in her droll voice, she said, "Americans have riots, Canadians have panel discussions on riots." And I just cracked up because it really captured it brilliantly. I mean, here I'm quoting her 45 years later. But here's the point of comparison. And this, I think you'll find heartening. So I retired 10 and a half years ago from law practice, and I'm now part-time teaching at three law schools, Western, Ottawa, and Queens. Just a couple days a month, a term, I mean. And at each of them, whenever I'm there, we arrange a pizza lunch, and any law students with disabilities who want to can come. We close the doors, kick out all the staff, and we have a behind closed doors discussion of practice. What are the barriers you're going to face? How do you stick handle through it? So the first thing I want you to know, at each of these law schools, I think 20 to 30% of the students self-identify as having a disability. 20 to 30% of law students. The second thing I want you to know is that it's the United Nations of disability. It's people with autism, people with anxiety disorders, people with ADHD. Yeah, we got blind people and we got people with hearing loss and we have people in wheelchairs and CP and, the whole spectrum. It's really, and of course, learning disabilities and so on. It's real, and any number of them just want to be lawyers, but any number of them also want to do disability rights. I've had any number of people, because at Osgood, where I used to teach part-time from 2016 to 2023, they have a program where each student has to do a 40-hour volunteer pro bono placement. And I've had a number of these students with me, probably 20 every year, volunteering to help with disability advocacy work I'm doing. And they apply, and I read their letters of, their application letters. Any number of them either have a disability or have a sib with a disability or have a parent with a disability and have helped them navigate or seen what they're up against and want to do something about it. And they want a placement with me so they can learn how to do this advocacy. It's amazing. My view, and it's a longer conversation than we can have now. In fact, I should talk about it more on a podcast, but my view of the future of disability advocacy in Canada is different from the past. In the past, we've relied on either national service providing charities, and they're going to continue to have a role, and we've relied on longstanding consumer groups like AEBC, and they're going to continue to have a role, and we need them, and we need more of them. But I believe the ultimate is going to come in no small part from what I call disability startups. When a bunch of people get together and they get together on a Zoom, there may be 5 of you, and you decide there's one particular thing you want to target, and you set up a Facebook page, you give yourself a name, you do a news release, you put up a web page, and you write a brief, and you get some media coverage or shoot a video and get it up on YouTube, and you kick some behind and get something done. And I think that will augment what the existing folks have done. And I think when I meet these folks in these, either through the Osgoode public interest activities or through these lunches or other classes I've taught at these law schools, I see lots of people who are potential disability startup initiators. In addition to all of us. I mean, I'm not counting any of us out, but I think and the beauty of that is that it allows people to get started more quickly. You don't need money. You don't need a lot of time. You don't need approval of the minutes and incorporating and grants and stuff. Those things are important. I'm not disparaging them. But in this case, it could be just 5 people who say they want to kick up trouble on a particular issue. They can start tonight and they could be going tomorrow.
That's interesting because that's the way the volunteer sector is going. The people want to do projects. They don't want to be committed to, a long-term thing. They want to do projects.
If I
That's
call
very
Marcy,
interesting.
Yale and say the AODA Alliance needs a new chair of a vice chair of the blah blah committee, and it's a 2-year commitment, your answer is going to be, I'm too busy. If I
Not
call
necessarily.
oh no. If I call Marcy Yale and say, we're doing an event in a month, can you pull this together? Or we want to do a strategy on X, can you pull this together? Would you mind steering it with a couple of people? You're far more likely to say yes.
Yeah,
And the other,
maybe.
you follow me?
Especially if it's an event especially if
Yeah,
it's something you're
exactly.
interested in as well too. Like
That's
you
true.
more and
Yeah,
more
well,
likely.
exactly. And if you care about it, you're going to want to get totally wrapped up in it, and then you're going to want to go even further. No, so that in a sense is, having seen this and having done not only advocacy but advocacy training here, in other parts of Canada, in New Zealand, in Israel, talking. Believe it or not, I once got to do a webinar on this in Tehran. I had an interpreter. How many Jewish guys get to give a disability training in Tehran? I mean, it's just not what you'd expect. But I got to do it. It's cool. But from all of this, I get to see some sort of get senses of what can work. And the beauty of what I'm talking about is it doesn't take away from what others are doing. It adds to it.
Yeah. Diana, you've been very patient with me. I apologize. I didn't realize that as a co-host you could raise your hand, and I went, I panned over and realized you had your hand up. So sorry. You're the last on this. You're the last person who has a question. So go
Oh, wow.
ahead.
Well, it's not really a question. I love your description of your book and advocacy a long time ago. For me, because I'm old, I'm pretty sure I'm a little older than you. I remember advocacy in the 80s, and I remember getting into it kicking and screaming and not being at all the high profile that you became. But I was a president for the Alberta Committee of Citizens with Disabilities, it was then, and I was in COPO. But what really struck me is in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I ran a network across Canada that was the first online network where groups could get together, and it was Disability Information Services of Canada. And Dawn, the Women's Network, and the deaf groups, all of a sudden, I saw people getting together online all across the country and coming together. And it was so cool. And they were using things like Versa Brailles and TTYs and really antiquated equipment to do it. But it was the first time that people could start to connect and mobilize across the country. And it was really expensive. It was a federal government, I think it cost, well, it seemed expensive to me. It was like $20,000 a month for the online services. It was quite amazing. And I just want to say that I really appreciate your book because I too love disability history.
Well, thank you very much. And, we need more of it. So it's great when anybody writes in this area. I'm honored to be part of the discussion tonight of this. But what I'm also coming to learn, and this is something that comes from the podcast, is sadly we're in a world where not as many people read as much, but they do listen to podcasts when they're flying somewhere, driving somewhere, on the treadmill, whatever. So it's a new way to reach people. And I'm loving it. I've decided that inside every journalist is a lawyer wannabe, and inside every lawyer is a journalist wannabe. That's certainly the case with me, and so I'm getting a chance to do it. And I welcome feedback on the pod, or if anybody has ideas of anyone else that would be good to get on it, just write me at aodafeedback@gmail.com. And I'd welcome a chance to do that. But if you do read the book, let me know what you think of it. I do slip in a couple of people whose views I really value, both journalists, said that I should put myself in the story, don't just tell the story. So I wrote a chapter which is kind of my autobiography from birth to 1980 when I was 23. Um, and I've got more writing to do, and I'm hoping to cover more in future writing. But I do hope that the personal angle makes it come alive. I mean, I did talk about the fact that when I got that phone call, I was pretty traumatized. Like I did not know what the hell to do, but we got through it. Anyway, thank you so much for including me, and a huge.
Can you take one more question?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
All
sure.
right, Louise, you got your hand up there at some point. Did you want to?
Yeah, I had a question because this is a different perspective of it. Back in 1980, I was a teenager. So, as you worked with different disabilities communities, and as you've done your work over the years, I'm trying to word this properly, have you found the contradiction of what people want and how to make what things should be accessible, how it should be accessible? Like, from the blind to the deaf to any other disabilities. One disability was this person will say, no, it can't be this way because it doesn't work for my disability compared to another disability. In all the years you've worked in this kind of field and done a lot, have you seen the contradiction in getting the work done?
That is such a fantastic question. It looks like I paid you to ask it because our episode that drops on Friday of the podcast is the first of a two-parter on how to find common ground between disability groups. And I interview an absolute artist at how to do this, who's got a great track record, and she talks all about it. So I'm not just promoting my podcast, I'm shamelessly promoting my podcast. But what I have found is this. Um, there is need for, and the podcast talks about this, proactive work to find common ground. When the 1970s, I'm going to oversimplify, but we had people in wheelchairs wanting ramps, blind people wanting braille, deaf people wanting sign language, and it made the government, it gave them this ideal position of divide and conquer. And I don't mean in a nasty way, but they could sort of say, well, when you folks figure out what's your priorities, you let us know, and play us off against each other. Not only that, but in these silos, we're all politically weaker. And a core thing that the Disability Act movement developed in the early 1990s, and there's an article on this also at that publications link. It's a history I wrote of the first 8 years of the Disability Act movement in Ontario. But what we did was say that we're all actually talking about the same thing, which is removing and preventing disability barriers. For a blind person, it may be the lack of braille on the elevator buttons. For a deaf person, it could be the lack of sign language. And for a wheelchair user, it could be a flight of stairs. But they're all barriers. So our shared goal is a barrier-free society. And when the government would say, well, what's your priority? We'd say, oh, we got one, barrier-free society. Well, which is more important, ramps or sign language? We said, no, 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 you're not playing that game. We're not picking priorities. Now, there are a couple of areas where there are technical potential conflicts and they require technical solutions. So in the olden days, the corner of at an intersection, the sidewalk, you had to step down. Well, that was a barrier for people in wheelchairs. So they then invented curb cuts. But that for people in wheelchairs, which was great, but that created a danger for blind people who don't have a cane detectable way to know that they're walking from the sidewalk onto the road. Well, the first step was what they called curb cuts, where they even though it ramped down, there would be a half an inch drop so your cane could detect that there's a lip there. And there were issues about should it be a half an inch or three-quarters of an inch, whatever. But, and then more recently, they've got the tactile walking surface indicators, though even that requires a solution because some people in wheelchairs say that they can make them pitch forward out of their chair. So, but this is a matter of being clever and creative in finding a technical solution. The aim is a barrier-free intersection, which means one where blind people can know when they're heading into traffic and people in wheelchairs can safely navigate from the sidewalk down to road level. And, you know, this is the old, they got somebody to land on the moon so they could figure this one out. So those are, so that's, but when I hear of conflicts, those are, I mean, the other one I've heard, which is, it just, I get, I want to make snarky remarks. Um, the conflict between ensuring people with guide dogs can get in places and a physician or a teacher who's allergic to dogs. I go, okay, fine. Let's figure it out. Are you the only doctor in practice? Can you find us another doctor in your clinic? Okay, we'll assign a different teacher to this class. We'll seat the person with the guide dog more than 2 meters away. You know, your allergy doesn't reach across the room, right? People can either identify look for problems or look for solutions. I'm a look for solution guy.
Wow, that's a great place to end. And I want to thank both of you, Hannah and David. I just looked at the participants list, and Hannah, you're still here. I want to thank you for joining us this and speaking with us this afternoon and evening, depending on where you are. Thank you also to everyone who joined us for our first 2026 National Accessibility Week Authors event. Your emails and social media have been peppered with postings and events celebrating this important week. We have an online survey that is asking whether there are certain things that drive you crazy, and it's got a great rating scale. So if you haven't checked that out, check it out. And we have some video clips from past years, from our last year's Accessibility Week Ask Me Anything panel. And those have been coming out every day, and they've been posted on social media and through our email lists. And tomorrow, our second virtual office event is going to happen at the same time, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, and it will feature another one of our members, Penny LeClaire, who has written a book jointly with her late husband, Paul Bennett, about her guide dog, Jefferson, and another woman, Lynn Jensen, who has written a book of travel tips focused specifically on our community. So we'd love to see you there. And it's the same Zoom link, so you've got it now. That's where we are going to be tomorrow. And I wish everybody a good rest of the day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you for checking out our content. To learn more about the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians, please visit www.blindcanadians.ca. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe.